Hello and welcome back to Whispers from the Dark. Have you ever wondered who you were named after? What they were like? If they would approve of you having their name? I've often wondered. I know my dad was named after a donkey, and I'll tell that story when I do his video. But I always wondered about myself. I know what my mom told me, but I didn't know how much of that I could believe. It seems like it all started in Memphis, Texas. Mom grew up in Memphis, went to school in Memphis. Memphis, if you don't know, it's just right before you get to Amarillo. But Mom said that she named me after a girl that was the sweetest girl she'd ever met, and that she had gone to her high school, the same school, there in Memphis. Now, Memphis is a small town, always has been, but from what I can understand back then, it was probably 5-6 times the size it is now. Cotton was a main product there. There was a lot of farmers, a lot of combines, cotton compresses. There was a train depot. Train went right through there. It was kind of a bustling town in the beginning. My grandfather was a night watchman at the cotton compress right before he died. I believe he also worked at the train station, possibly also doing security. They called them night watchmen back then. And they even had their own struggles and disasters back in, I believe, 1929. They had a train crash there in Memphis. But even through all of that, and the fact that, these guys were poor and worked hard and tried to do the best they could for their families and their cities, they started building up after the Depression, building up Memphis. New businesses started popping up. People started taking pride in the city. A lot of things started getting built. Businesses opening. People coming there to work because that was one place they could. They could get a job as with one of the farmers or at the cotton compress. After the Depression, it really started picking up. Started doing better. And from what I understand, my grandparents' lives were getting better. My mom grew up the youngest of 7, I believe 7. And after World War II, it really started picking up. As you can see in this picture, there was men sitting around the bank. There's businesses. There's money starting to be had. People are starting to breathe easy. And they even start building parks. They built a park. They started laying the streets with brick. So most of the streets in Memphis, Texas are made of brick. And those streets were laid by my uncles and my grandfather. They had a hand in laying those streets. Matter of fact, the street that goes from downtown Memphis down to the park, my uncles and grandfather helped lay. I mean, they had their own jobs, but every man in the city pitched in if they were able and helped build the streets, helped set the stones down, and they helped build the park. Now, this park was something. Had an amphitheater. It had plenty of places for kids to play, but I always kind of got the willies there. Never really liked it. I always felt like someone was watching me, even though you could look around and tell there was no one there. I still always kind of got the willies from that park, even as a small child. But now as an adult, I know why. Well, back in the 50s, it was a popular place to go. And back to the girl that I was named after. Found a picture of her in 5th grade. Her name is Cynthia Ann Combist. And there she is. Cute little innocent face. Bless her heart. But not too long after this picture was taken, her innocence would be taken away, along with her mother. And then not long after that, she would pass. It seems that Cynthia Ann was about 13 when her mom decided that she didn't want to live anymore. She had 2 children. She had Cynthia Ann that was 13, and then I think her brother Larry was 5 years younger. So she had 2 children, one small one just starting junior high school, and Miss Combis checked out. She stamped her own ticket. And it's taken me all these years to find out this information and to find out why or where. No one will know why. But this is where she did it. She did it in the park. Seems like she drove into the park and drank poison. I just showed you her death certificate. Self-administered poison. But this is where they found her. And now I know why. My whole life, I've never felt comfortable in that park. Even though my mother loved it there. She grew up there as a kid. And of course Cynthia did too. But Cynthia was such a sweet girl, Mom said. And she had her whole life in front of her. And at age 13, she lost her mother. But things were starting to look a little better. She was staying with her maternal grandparents, her and her brother. And she was in the band at school, played the drums, just like me, and was having a good time. And then the band went to the Dallas State Fair to participate in Music Appreciation Day, where all the bands, or a lot of the bands that were invited across the state of Texas would come and perform. And they were waiting on their time to practice whenever they went and started getting on the rides. Cynthia and 2 companions got up on the Ferris wheel in their band uniforms, wearing their band uniforms. and the seat on the Ferris wheel broke loose, and they fell. Cynthia, unfortunately, fell all the way to the ground and died. 15-year-old girl. And from what my mom said, the sweetest girl she had ever met fell approximately 90 feet to her death. The other two girls had severe injuries, and one of them had injuries to the point to where she limped and had problems with her hip for the rest of her life. But the other two girls, as well as the others that were hit by the debris that was falling from the broken Ferris wheel car, and the girls, they were injured, they were cut, and they had lifelong nightmares. This is the death certificate for Cynthia Ann. It shows that her car fell from the Ferris wheel, and she had head and neck injuries, and she was just 15. This story obviously hit the news and was across the globe. Other countries, even Canada, covered the story and told about the tragedy where the Ferris wheel broke and a 15-year-old girl fell to her death. Every state in the Union, as well as Canada and several other countries, told of the tragedy. I cannot imagine what her dad was going through after just losing his wife 2 years before, and then his 15-year-old daughter. I can't imagine, as a parent, what horrors he went through. And from the research I've done, I found out that he lived to 2002. He lived a long life. He outlived my mother. No, I take that back, he didn't. Mom had him by a few years, but of course he was a lot older because he was a schoolgirl companion's father. But from the research I've done, Cynthia's little brother, Edward, did quite well for himself. He moved on, got into politics, and represented us in Washington. Bless his heart. And his dad, or her dad, their dad, moved further west out of the Memphis area, found someone, remarried, had a family, and I guess was able to put the tragedy behind him and have a full, happy life. At least I hope so. Memphis was a small town. It still is. It started out like any other small town, with people scraping to make it and to try to feed their families and open businesses and support local people in their businesses. People worked hard to make Memphis what it was. and they were doing good. And they were doing great after World War II. They started really making Memphis something. There were 2 theaters. There were several restaurants. There was drive-ins. There was a drive-in theater as well, but drive-in hamburger joints. It was a busy place. One of the business owners lost his wife and then his daughter. And Cynthia Ann was one of the most popular girls in the school. She was fun-loving, always trying to get people to follow her lead and do things fun and silly. And when she died, it took the wind out of the sails at Memphis. I'm pretty amazed after all the research I've done that Mom had never told me just how bad and hard it hit the city of Memphis. All she told me when I was growing up was I was named after a girl that went to the state fair in Dallas for a school trip, and her and her boyfriend, which wasn't the truth, it was her and her girlfriends, were up on the Ferris wheel when it broke loose and she fell down and died. She said she was the sweetest girl that she'd ever met, and that's why she named me after her. But she never once told me about how it affected the city and everyone involved, all of her friends. I guess it hurt too bad. Or maybe you forget that part and just cling to the good stuff. Either way, I'm named after Cynthia Ann. And now that I know this story is true, I've done the research. I've seen the stories. I know it's true. It really happened. My heart goes out to her and her families and the people that were involved that day that saw it happen or that were physically affected by it. My prayers to you is for peace. And Cynthia will always be remembered. Cynthia Ann, you're not forgotten. May you rest in peace. Thank you for listening, guys. Please go below to the link to her Find a Grave site and leave some flowers. Thank you. Bye.